Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Jim Crider, who's the CEO of Intentional Living FP. Jim, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. And I want to hear all about your company, how you serve your clients, and your entrepreneurial journey. But I always like to kind of almost quiz myself when I start off and go, Jim's with, Intentional Living. And it's like that speaks volumes. We could probably spend 4.5 hours on the genesis behind intentional living, what that really means. But it's such a neat word because you don't just live and go with the flow. You have to plan out and be intentional about living, whether it's, spiritual, financial, professional, all of that. So I'm excited to learn about your company. So bring us up to speed on your entrepreneurial journey to this point in your career.
Gosh, yeah. I've always been entrepreneurial, I would say, ever since I was a kid. But I went to school. I got my degree in business. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to own businesses in some capacity. After school, got married. My wife and I were broke newlyweds, and I bounced from job to job doing sales, despite being a really bad salesperson. So I did that for about five or so years, and then that led to a point of unemployment. I left a job just without any heads up. And that led to me being unemployed for about 7 months, which caused me to really think about what do I want to do? I thought about teaching high school geography or continuing in sales or going into ministry, all these different routes. I didn't really know what I wanted. But after a while, I started thinking about financial stress. Unemployment for a sustained period of time can do that. And I started thinking about how, money is the number one cause of divorce in the U.S. consistently. And it's one of the top causes of personal stress. And if I could help people navigate that, if I could help families have healthy conversations around money and then use their money for what's truly important in life, how amazing would that be as a way to spend my career? And that's really that's how I got into finance. I didn't know what a CFP is or what financial planning was. I just knew, gosh, I would love to sit with families and just help them have healthy conversations around their money. And that's how it all started.
So then why wasn't it more of let me learn about budgeting and I'll teach you how to save and plan? What attracted you to actually like certified financial planner or investing or retirement planning? What was it about that was attractive to you?
Yeah, I didn't know the difference between these. I didn't know that there were CFPs versus only investment managers versus budget coaches. Yeah. I just knew that I want to talk to people about their money itself and how do you align your money in your life. But that's it. And I had a friend of a friend of a friend worked at Fidelity Investments, and they helped me get a job there. And from day one, one of the VPs came in, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do this, but after she was done talking, I went and approached her. I thought, that's why she came. So I said, hey, I love my new role. That's obviously an entry-level role. I'm helping people reset their passwords when they get locked out of the 401k. I want to be in this role eventually. So how do I get from here to there? And that was just the start of this journey of I think I have an idea of what I want. So I'm going to pursue that with everything I have and then just continue to iterate as I learn more about what this means. So at first that was, just some sort of more in-depth conversation about families and money. And then it became, I got my 7 and 66, which allowed me to talk more about stocks and mutual funds and stuff. And then I went into the CFP curriculum and was like, oh my gosh, this is real financial planning. And then I stumbled on people like Michael Kitces and Carl Richards, these people that really have changed the way I think about engaging people in these conversations. And that led to me to, wow, it's not just about the numbers, but it's about the life. And the numbers are ways of supporting the life itself. And there was a continual pursuit of, I think I know what I want, so I'm going to run after that with everything I have while still being agile enough and flexible enough to, as I become clear with the vision, I can continue to iterate with the way I'm pursuing this. And it was just a continual iteration as I got clearer and clearer on actually how I want to spend my time and who I want to work with.
Well, I think that is such a neat aha light bulb moment for people because I've got 4 kids, ages 18 to 23, and most all of them are like, "What shall I do in life?" That kind of thing, and they know the general direction. But one of them is a super planner, and it's like, "I want every step planned out in my life," and I'm like, That's not the way things work. You need to have a general direction and then take that first step in faith and go, okay, here's what I'm doing right now. And then do you need to make it, I love the word iterations because it really is not a full on pivot 180, but sometimes there's that iteration of, oh, you know what, in, financial, I could do so many things. I could be in sales. I could be in service. And I think that that's such a neat mentality there. But at the surface or below the surface level is you wanted to help and serve and provide value. And I think that's right there, that umbrella, of over everything, that comes to the point where, okay, now if I'm in that nasty word of sales, then at least I'm going to do it ethically and serving and caring and providing value and seeing what people need and what I can provide. And if there's a fit, wonderful. So is that kind of the approach that you take in your financial planning firm?
That's exactly. The families I work with are really in a very similar phase that I'm in right now. So I'm 32 and my average client's about 33, young family. And as you remember, like the life changes you experience between your mid 20s to mid 40s are just constant. And the families I work with, we anchor in what's the underlying value, the purpose, the underlying why with your family itself, because those things tend to stay consistent. But then once we understand those things and we're clear on that vision and those values, then we can set goals. But understanding, just like the career direction, I know that I want to help people with their money, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what a CFP is. I don't know where I want to work, who I want to work with, but I'm going to pursue this. So we can pursue those things that are anchored in your values, understanding that as we establish goals, those goals are going to change. So yeah, that is definitely goes in tandem with the way I work with their families.
Yep. And so is there a typical goal? Like you said, your families are typically on the younger side as opposed to, hey, Jim, I'm 52, getting ready to retire in a handful of years. Is there a typical goal that your clients have? And along with that question, it always interests me because it seems like when you're working with families, talking about money / retirement, you almost put on the hat of being a life coach, life planner, because you don't just go, oh, cool, you need to maximize your portfolio, so let's do this. It really is, hey, guys, where do you want to be at retirement age? Do you want to kick back and play golf all day and travel? That's an option. But most of the time, many times people want this other life where it's like, I want to scale back and work maybe 2 days a week because I want to be productive. So what is some of those life aspirations that you're helping people attain through financial?
Those are the exact conversations we have. So our average client typically wants work optionality by their, let's say, mid to late 40s. So about 48 is when the average family wants the ability to not have to work if they so choose. Yeah. Now, I'm intentional when I don't use the word retirement because, ironically, most of the people I work with actually really enjoy what they do. They just want the ability to not have to do it if they so choose, and they want that ability sooner rather than later. And the underlying theme there is time freedom. But again, we anchor into that. I would say that is a goal. Retirement or work optionality is a goal, but the underlying value, the underlying purpose, the why there is to have more time to spend with the people that I love. That is the theme of the families I work with. We want time freedom, so I have more time to enjoy and be with those that I care about. And that really impacts the way that we work with families. So, our average client is in their early to mid 30s, and most of our families have young kids. And if you tell me, hey, Jim, we want to not have to work sooner than later so we can spend more time as a family with my spouse and then with our children, that's fantastic. And that's the goal that we're aiming for. But we have to keep in mind why we're doing that. If you told me, hey, I want this time flexibility so I can spend with the people I love, so I can be with my kids, how foolish would it be to work 70 hours a week and never be present? So then in 15 years, you can be retired and spend more time with your kids. Well, at that time, your kids are going to be out of the house and they're going to be busy with their own lives with families of their own. So we have to remember, hey, you told me you want this so you can be with the people you love, your kids right now. RFAs that they want you to read to them at night. They want you to cuddle them. They want you to go and be their coach at their t-ball game. So we can't miss these moments. So it's a balancing act of how do we help you do and live the life that you want to live right now. Be present. Because it would be foolish to neglect those things now, but also doing this in a way that will allow you to do it in the future and hopefully in an even more grand way, and set that up where you're doing it then, and also setting up a legacy of time together as a family and instilling those values as a family.
Well, and what you just said reminds me of something I say over and over and over again, which is like sometimes you're so close to the situation, like in this case, your family, your goals, your aspirations, that you can't see the forest for the trees. That person that just said that to you in that hypothetical example, they thought that they're just all aligned. But in reality, like on your website, you've got, your calendar, accounts aligned, living aligned. Well, if you notice that, hey, guys, you said you wanted this, but you're doing that, that's not living in alignment. And in all kindness and care, I want to show you how we can bring those into alignment so that, okay, yes, that feels great. And yes, financial freedom / retirement, whatever you want to call it, really is the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it and have that freedom and flexibility. And yes, you might want to work. You might want to volunteer. You might want to be more involved in your local church or go on a mission trip, but you might be constrained because you don't have the cash flow or the margin to be able to do that. Like I'll bet you if you ask most of your clients when they first come to you, hey, do you think you can take 3 months off or 2 months off this summer and go out to, this, whatever the case is, and be like, oh my word, no, we can't go, 2, 3, 4 weeks without. But when you can have that, all of those things in alignment, it opens up opportunities.
Exactly. That's where I constantly come back to Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about leaning your ladder against the wrong wall. And you can be wildly successful. You can climb really high and really fast and far and beat everyone else. But if your ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, every rung further that you climb is actually taking you further from what you said is important. So yeah, maybe you're retired at 43 and you feel real great. But then you look back and realize, my gosh, I neglected my kids when they were under my roof and now they're gone. What was this all for? So we have to remain anchored in. And that's where I spent the first several years in finance working with people who were, traditional clients of financial planning firms. So, usually people who are about to retire, just retired. And I spent a lot of those years working with physicians. So they did really well financially. And in so many of these conversations, we would be talking about the money. And then I just pause, say, hey, well, you've clearly done well financially. I'm just curious. Why did you decide to become a physician, and what motivated you to do so well financially? And 80% of the time, I would say at least, they would pause and they would think back and say, well, usually the case was, well, when I was a kid, my family didn't have much. I had to hear my parents fight about money all the time. And our lights would get turned off sometimes, and I had bad clothes, so I got made fun of, and our food didn't taste very, very good, and we didn't get to go on these fun family trips that my friends got to go on. So when I was young, I decided that I wanted to make a lot of money. So my kids had a better childhood than I had. Mm-hmm. And then we're sitting in the office and it's like, well, wow, well, I can see your balance sheet. You did it. You made a whole lot of money. So we know you did that, but you said that you want to do that. So your kids had a good childhood. So how was it? Your kids are grown now. They're in their 30s. But how was that time? How was it? Did you do it? How was being a dad? How was being a mom? How was their childhood? And almost all the time, the vast majority of the time, they would sit back and get this look of like, just reality just hit them. And they realize, I was able to buy my kids lots of stuff, but I honestly couldn't say if they had a better child than I had because I was so busy pursuing the money. So they had a quote unquote good childhood that I missed it. And that right there is leaning your ladder against the wrong wall. That is not being intentional. That is being wildly successful in goals, but missing the entire purpose.
Yeah.
So we have to be anchored in that. That is the driving force of how we work with our families.
100%. And you mentioned Stephen Covey's book, and one of the things, of course, from his teachings was, begin with the end in mind. And so that's exactly what we're talking about here. And then another, since we're talking books, I'm a big book guy. So here's one from way back in the day. Have you ever read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss?
Yes, sir.
So I think it's he writes a really strange thing sometimes, and I obviously think that the 4-hour work week is not attainable. But one of the things that I remember from that book was he said something to the effect of, hey, why strive to get to quote unquote retirement? And who knows whether you'll have the health to enjoy the active lifestyle that you plan for? Who knows? But why don't you take these little mini retirements? Why don't you structure your life, or if you're a business owner, your business, where you can leave for these little mini retirements of 3-4 months, whatever time. Let's pick 3 months, and you go away, and everything's running like clockwork. You're still making your money, but you're enjoying your life now, because if you put it off totally to there and you're grinding, thinking, I'm just supporting my family to give them the things I didn't have when I grew up, like in the example you just gave. Well, what they really want is that T word, time. They want your time and attention. And that's just something that I think we all need to realize, at the end of the day, we still might have that whole list of to-dos we didn't get to done, but it'll be there tomorrow, and it'll be there the next day. And we just got to chip away and be efficient and be diligent. Got it. But take that time, block off the things that are, non-negotiables, and I can confidently and joyously say, and my kids, I mentioned 18 to 23, there's never been a time that I missed one of their things, their soccer game, or tonight we're going to one of my daughter's symphony concerts. Even if it's in the middle of the day, you do it. So I think that what you're talking about there is when you're providing that to your clients, now now you're showing them the transformation they can have. Then the transportation to get them there is now when you roll up your sleeves and go, okay, let's talk about some retirement planning financially, and how are you set for this? And here's a recommendation there. So I just really love that approach that you're talking about there.
Yeah, that's where the way I talk maybe sounds like I'm undercutting the value of the technical side of planning, and I definitely don't intend to. I have my CFP. As soon as I finish my CFP, I just reread my books because I enjoy that. But we have to remember that the numbers, the tax planning, the investments, estate planning, those are all simply supporting characters in the narrative of your life and the story you're wanting to build. And how do those things, my job is simply to help my families become articulate on what's important to them, who do they want to be, what do they want to do, and then I come alongside and say, okay, well, what's the most efficient and effective way to use your resources, your time, your money, your skills and talents to support what you said is important to you.
Yep.
Those should never take a light as the foundational, character. It's you. It's about you. Yep. It's about what's important to you. And then how do we align these things to support that? That's the focus. And that's why I love this. Is it never gets old, because everyone has a story. I could have a conversation one after another, but every family, if you need to get to that conversation, each conversation can be wildly exciting, because you're getting to the things of like, wow, this is what gets you up. This is what gets you excited. And this is what you wake up in the morning and you're ready to go, and what you're daydreaming about when you're in your job that you hate. How do we get that torch, as George Kendra talks about? How do we light that torch and keep that torch lit? So we're pursuing these things well while living in the present as well.
100%. I love it. And it reminds me of from the medical industry. We've heard it said before that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So if that doctor walks in the room and goes, "Hey, Jim, thanks for coming in today. So here's your prescription. We're going to go ahead and operate on this and give it," and you're like, "What? I just came in for a foot injury," and you're like trying to operate. What? He didn't ask questions. He didn't diagnose. And so when you do that, when you do it the right way, like you just laid out, and you begin with the end in mind, and you go, where do you want to be? And let's get you there. Then all the other things, at that point in the conversation, you probably haven't mentioned stock, bond, mutual fund, insurance, none of that. Because now you're going, okay, now that we know we want to get here, here's some things to consider. Your choice. I'm not going to push you into one over the other, but here's one thing that will provide this to you. And as you can tell from this conversation so far, we've not talking about products or prescriptions or strategies, because in reality, all of that can change from time to time. Jim Crider might be recommending one thing to one family, and in 6 months, it might be a little different nuance because the market's changed. And that's where, when you stay up to date on all of that, now you're bringing the most relevant information to your clients.
Exactly. And as Stephanie Bogan, another coach, says, is when your vision is clear, the decisions are easy. So we have to make sure we're clear on vision. We spend so much time there. And then when we bring in the financial parts, it's not like we're not wasting energy by trying to muddy through decisions, and we're not taking action that's inefficient because we take one action, realize that it's actually not in line with the vision. We're able to take clear, consistent, direct action because we spent so much time up front understanding what's important. And if you don't do that, you might take one action and realize, oh my gosh, this is actually not in line with what I wanted, switch things up. Like, no, the actual planning thing should be very efficient if you did it right. And you have to be in the correct order of operations, but it has to be anchored in the underlying purpose. And then from there, it should all align. It should become smooth. Yeah, things are going to change. That's totally fine. We expect it to. But we have to know that those changes are always rooted in the why. If something changes, why is this changing? Why is this part of your life changing? Why is your plan changing? And if we don't know why that is, if it's not serving the purpose that we established initially, then we need to either revisit your purpose or revisit that change that's coming and make sure we're staying consistent along with what you said.
Yep. Well, Jim, I think we could keep on keeping on for about hours on end and still be taking our first breath and keeping on from there. So why don't we wrap it up with this? If someone is listening to this and feeling like maybe they need to get a little bit more intentional with aligning their life and finances and everything together, what's the best way they can reach out to you, connect, learn more, and see if you can bring them some clarity to their financial picture?
Yeah, you can reach me. So my website, it's Intentional Living FP, as in financial planning. So intentionallivingfp.com. On there, and even on my homepage, there's my calendar. You can feel free to put 15 minutes on my calendar. I'd be more than happy to chat with you. If you have a one-off question about a mutual fund or your 401k, I'll do my best to answer that for you. Or if you have thoughts on, hey, here's something that we hope for, just want to talk it through, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate you coming on today. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.